know you're tired. I know you're hurting. And I wish I could say something that was classy and inspirational. But that just wouldn't be our style. Pain heals. Chicks dig scars. Glory lasts forever. Right on. Shotgun. DC right. Flip 90. Dig. On the center. On the center. Ready?
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Air Raid Hour. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at Judge Mathis, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host Dave Tilton. You can find him on Twitter at Tilt Money. Together, we are the Bills guys, presented by the Buffalo Fanatics. And I must say this: if you are a fan of the Matt Breida signing, smash those likes right now. We really appreciate it if you would smash those likes. You're a Bills fan. You're a fan of Efe Obada. I'm already screwing up his name. If you're a fan of Matt Breida, smash those likes. It really helps us out in the YouTube algorithm. And also, we're just a fan of the Matt Breida signing. So it would be greatly appreciated if you could do that. As always, we're presented by the Buffalo Fanatics. You can find the Buffalo Fanatics at any of these great locations. Honestly, you can find them anywhere. But on Twitter at BFLO Fanatics, Instagram, The Buffalo Fanatics, and on Facebook at Buffalo Fanatics. Head on over to thebuffalofanatics.com for all the great articles that our writers work hard as heck on. We just had a Matt Breida piece drop just within the last hour or so. So head on over to the blog and check that out. bffanshop.com. You can get all the great Buffalo Fanatics gear, 10% off, using the promo code Bills guys. And of course, you can always join the BF Text Club, 24/7 access to Buffalo Fanatics, 716-219-0086, and become a 24/7 member of the Buffalo Fanatics. And Dave, we are brought to you newly, as always, by Symbol. And talk about Symbol a little bit.
Yeah, Symbol's our newest sponsor for the Air Raid Hour. They're the stock market for sports. You can invest, buy shares in your favorite teams using the promo code Fanatics. If you go to symbol.app/Fanatics, you can get a $10 deposit bonus. So it's not a percentage. You get, $10 no matter how much you deposit in there. And they've also shared this little commercial with us that we're going to play really quick.
You love gambling on games, playing fantasy sports, and investing in the stock market. But are you tired of the high gambling fees, professional fantasy players, and investing in companies you don't know anything about? What if there was a way to invest in your favorite sports teams, just like the stock market, with real money? Well, now there is with Symbol. Symbol has blended the stock market and gambling to create this new form of investing that allows users to profit off their sports knowledge. You can now buy and sell shares of sports teams, earn weekly payouts if a team you own wins. And the best part is, if a team you own loses, you don't lose anything since your investment holds value over time. Visit symbol.app to learn more. Invest in what you know. Invest in sports.
All right, and thank you, Symbol, for that. And remember to use the code Fanatics to get your $10 deposit bonus. So thank you for that.
And before we get started, last thing today, got to shout out our super chat superstars at the very bottom of the screen. These guys will be rolling through all episode. Thank you guys so much for all you do to support the Buffalo Fanatics and what we do here at the Air Raid Hour. And always remember, super chatters jump the line. And again, subscribe, like, and share us on Facebook. And if you want to join the Bing Squad, head on over to jointhefanatics.com. All right, let's get right into it because I think I've said this multiple times this offseason. I will take any of Kyle Shanahan's castaways. I will take any of his youth parts. If you were once a running back for Kyle Shanahan, you are good enough for me. And sure enough, the Buffalo Bills went out and they got me one of those Kyle Shanahan castaways and Matt Breida. What are your thoughts on Matt Breida?
Well, I think it's a great signing. I mean, we talked about the three sort of Kyle Shanahan castaways, and you had the two that were still with Shanahan and McKinnon and Coleman, and then you had the 1 year removed from Shanahan with Breida going to the Dolphins, and it never really seemed like the Dolphins kind of used him. It not necessarily maybe wasn't a fit. Our own Finsider Kevin Garrard wasn't really sure about the fit with Breida anyway, but thought it was a good move for us. I think it's a good move, right? It adds the speed element to the backfield that we're lacking. It's been well documented already on social media over the last couple hours about his top speed, his miles per hour, all this and that. We know he can break off those long runs. And that is something we were missing. And once again, it kind of, Brandon Beane is kind of every one of these little moves he's making, he's opening himself up for more and more flexibility in the draft. And maybe it's not even flexibility. Maybe he has an idea of already what he wants to do, but it's making it harder for other teams to predict now what the Bills might do in the draft. And look, we lost TJ Yeldon for as, valuable or not as you thought TJ Yeldon was. It's nice to have that veteran now back in the mix, a different skill set, obviously, than TJ Yeldon, more of the speed guy. But I like the move, honestly. I do like the move. And I think that it's, we talked about before about not having redundancies in the backfield as far as skill sets. And this certainly adds an element of skill set that we did not have. So I'm a fan of the signing.
Here we got John coming in earlier. Super chat. Always appreciate it, John. He says, at the scouting combine, Breida ran a 4.28, and he corrected himself, 4.38, at the combine with 23 bench reps at 225 pounds, and he was only 195 pounds. And he had a 42-inch vertical. So Matt Breida is an absolute beast, and that's what he is. Like, the dude is an athlete. And a couple of people are asking in the comment section, like, is he fast? Is he fast? Yes, sir. Like, this is a guy who was the fastest player in the league, according to Clay Troya, who posted this on Twitter today, in 2018 and 2019, per like NFL Next Gen stats. This dude was rumbling at 22, 23, 24 miles an hour on some of his touchdown runs, some of his long distance touchdown runs, like in the preseason against the Browns. If you head on over to the Bills guys on Twitter, I posted a bunch of different clips of Matt Breida and some of the different things he's going to bring to this offense. Pass catching ability. Like, he caught a pass from Jimmy Garoppolo. It kind of looked like that Isaiah McKenzie pass against San Francisco. The dude is really good at coming out of the backfield, running those posts. He's really coming out, running those wheel routes. He can catch the ball out of the backfield, make things happen with it. He's got that speed to take the distance from anywhere on the football field. And one of the things I liked the most, because a couple of people are like, oh, TJ Yeldon, he's just going to be TJ Yeldon. He's just going to sit on the bench. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. Like, oh, why aren't the Buffalo Bills going to go after a first-round running back? Which they still might, by the way. If you look at a lot of his film, what Matt Breida is really known for is his ability to make those jump cuts, his vision, his quick read, and his jump cuts. And what did the Buffalo Bills struggle with? We talked with Nate Geary from WGR 550 when we did that Notre Dame show. He said the Buffalo Bills struggled with the outside zone. The Buffalo Bills running backs were struggling to get around the end on the outside zone. And Cover One also did a couple of mock-ups where they showed the Buffalo Bills offensive line did a plenty of good job blocking, and either Moss or Singeltary didn't read and didn't make the right cut and didn't hit the proper hole. I don't think you're going to have to worry about that with Matt Breida. So you could see some more success in those outside zone runs and some of the runs that we did last year with Matt Breida, and it'll have to be less of us having to switch to a different type of running scheme. So I'm super pumped about this Matt Breida addition to this offense.
And you mentioned the pass catching, which is something that we've also been kind of clamoring for. A lot of us have been talking about guys like Kenneth Gainwell or Demetric Felton in the draft. And you look at his numbers, he only started one game last year for Miami, but over his 4 seasons, he's got just under 80 catches. So he's averaging right around 20 receptions a season. And he only had 9 last year. So in his first year, 21, 27, 19. So this is a guy that could, in not even as a full-time player, bring that element to your offense. Because let's not forget, when he was with the Niners, he wasn't a full-time player. He still had Jeff Wilson and Coleman there. And in Miami, obviously, they didn't really use him. So like, this role seems to suit him. We know that he's kind of that guy that can get banged up a little, but he doesn't really miss a ton of time, for as much as like we might think that he gets banged up a bit. I mean, he's never played less than 12 games in a season. for his fourth season. So great move for the Bills. I think it's a good fit for the room as well. Seems like a guy that will fit well with what they've got.
Yeah, and you got I can a waterfall coming in with a super chat. Always appreciate that. And if I mispronounce that, please give me some sort of pronunciation guide in the comment section. But he says, what do y'all think about taking a guard or a one tech defensive lineman first round? That's an immediate impact. Look at the Colts. They were in the game because their O-line is nice. That John Feliciano contract, we mentioned it on the last show. It opens the Buffalo Bills up to where if like Elijah Vera Tucker drops to 30, pull the trigger. Like there's nothing stopping you. Then John Feliciano becomes part of the left guard competition and he's competing with Cody Ford. And, if he doesn't win out and Cody Ford finally reaches his ceiling, John Feliciano at $3 million per with absolutely no guaranteed money after the first year becomes the best swing interior offensive lineman in the National Football League who could play left guard, right guard, and center. So the Buffalo Bills, Brandon Beane, it's right there in the banner. He's filling out the roster. He's filling out all those holes. He's truly leaving the Buffalo Bills in the best position possible to take whoever they think is the best player on the board. It can be a corner. It can be a one tech. It can be a three tech. It can be an edge rusher. It can be a running back. It can pretty much be anything but quarterback, I think, and wide receiver at this point. And it still wouldn't shock me if they pulled the trigger on a Kadarius Toney or a Rondale Moore, even though the Isaiah McKenzie signing makes that a little bit more unlikely. Dave, we haven't had a chance to hit on the Isaiah McKenzie re-signing, but for 1 year, was it $1 million, $350K guaranteed?
It was like 1.125 or something like that. Yeah.
It's only $350K guaranteed. What do you think about bringing Isaiah McKenzie back into the fold for that?
Well, it's good insurance, right? Because you didn't bring back Andre Roberts from a special team standpoint to do kick and punt returns. So it's nice to have someone, one, familiar with the team, and two, someone that could slide into that role doing kick and punt returns. I mean, I know there's, a mixed bag of perspectives here as far as like, his ball security issues in the past. We know, that's been a problem for him, but he's also a guy that the team really loves and has worked really hard to kind of improve upon that since he's come over to the Bills from the Broncos. And what it does in my mind is, again, it frees Brandon Beane up to say, like, I don't necessarily have to go out into the draft and find someone who can return kicks and punts. If I do, that's great. I'll have a competition. But worst case scenario, I have Isaiah McKenzie who knows the team, who's motivated, clearly, and kicks and punts. And if he does that in addition to already what he gave you offensively as a gadget guy, then I think it's well worth the $1.125 million. I mean, you mentioned, Jamal Agnew was the guy we always like wanted to compare to him on the market, and the dollars, I mean, are incredibly, there's a huge gap, right, in the contract. So you're getting a big value, I think, with bringing back McKenzie. And now, in theory, you don't have to have the conversation in the summer like we did last year of like, are we going to keep 6 or 7 receivers? Because we know we had to keep Andre Roberts to do kick and punt returns. Can you get a 2-for-1, so to speak, with having McKenzie on the roster and having a guy that can take care of that for you, but also offer something to you a little bit in the receiving game as a gadget guy? So it's a good move for the Bills again.
Possibly open up a spot to start to play actual 3 legitimate running backs and not Taiwan Jones. Like, you can actually have Moss, Singeltary, and Breida on your active roster playing. Pierre comes in and says, let's face it, Breida is good enough to start. Pretty stoked. I made this comment on Twitter a couple of years ago when Matt Breida was in his first year and he was filling up the fantasy stat sheet. I came out and I remember I tweeted this because I got like flamed for it. I'm like, yo, Matt Breida reminds me a lot of Fred Jackson. People are like, dude, they're totally different running backs. One guy is way bigger and not as fast, and this guy's smaller. And I'm like, that's not what I meant. What I meant was these guys come from that UDFA mentality, those smaller school guys. I know Georgia Southern is still that FCS, but like just those underdog type of running backs who get into the National Football League, get a chance and just make the most of their opportunity. That's what Fred Jackson did. And I think that's what Breida did early on in his career. And they both wore 22, which is kind of what reminded me of it a couple of years ago. And he seems like the kind of guy who could come in here to Buffalo and he can make the most of this opportunity. And if he were to come in and he were to impress the coaching staff, it wouldn't surprise me if he was the bell cow running back this year. It wouldn't shock me because Devin Singeltary and Zach Moss, they're only 3rd round picks. I know it'd say only 3rd round picks, but it's not like the Buffalo Bills are too heavily invested in those guys. If Matt Breida is the one making the plays, if Matt Breida is the one who gives the Buffalo Bills the best chance to win, they're not going to feel tied to Zach Moss or Devin Singletary the way they might have if it was Matt Breida and Travis Etienne or Matt Breida and Najee Harris. So,
Well,
I'm really
well,
looking forward to seeing if Matt Breida can once again take full advantage of his opportunities and maybe become the bell cow back here in Buffalo.
Well, and we saw it not last year, but the year before. The Bills weren't afraid to give Frank Gore the rock when they had
Mhm.
Devin Singletary as a rookie who they had just drafted. So we shouldn't be surprised if he does end up if he does end up showing the best out of these guys like in camp or practice or whatever, and he comes out as the starter,
Mhm.
heading into week 1. And like you said, it's not like, well, as of right now, we don't have that big high investment in the running back, and we don't have the investment in a free agent like,
Mhm.
the Packers re-upping on an Aaron Jones or Seattle re-upping on Chris Carson. Like, it should be considered wide open, right? I mean, the conversation we had a couple years ago was, can McCoy hold off Devin Singletary? And then they ended up trading McCoy, um, or cutting him. I think I can't remember if they traded him or cut him now at this point. It was so long ago before the season started. So the Bills aren't going to be afraid to put Matt Breida right in the mix if he ends up being the most impressive guy in practice.
Yeah, Pierre comes in and says could even start every quarter with Breida to get drives going, and then finish the quarters with the bruiser like Zach Moss, the tough yard guys. So many different options the Buffalo Bills give themselves now, and you know that they do. LeBron is the GOAT coming in here saying we didn't have a speed back, and now we do.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon Beane is filling all those holes. He just went out and got a guy who can easily come in here and compete to be the speed running back and just be a role player on this team if that's his floor. We don't have to take a running back now in the, first round like some people have been speculating. However, if Brandon Beane, like Najee Harris drops or Javonte Williams drops or Travis Etienne drops and Brandon Beane thinks that that's the best player available, Matt Breida is in here on a 1-year contract that's probably not for a lot of money, and there's probably not a lot of guarantees attached. So he can easily pull the trigger on a running back if he still wants to. People are like, oh, the Bills are out of the running back in the first round market now. Yeah, I don't think so.
Not
I think
necessarily.
they are
Yep.
easily still in it if Brandon Beane decides that A, a running back is worth the first round pick, and B, that running back is the best player on the field. Somebody mentioned Efe Obada up here. And we got to get to Efe before we get to our special guest. Efe Obada signed with the Buffalo Bills yesterday on a pretty decent 1-year deal for around, I believe, around $2.2 million. That might have been the incentives that kick it up into that range. But Dave Arizi coming in saying Efe Obada will have 10.5 sacks or more this year. That is a hot and spicy take, but the man did have 5.5 sacks last year. He hasn't been playing football for very long. He came out of the same international program that Christian Wade did. He's an absolute physical freak at 6'6", 200 and some people have him listed at 265. Some people have him listed at 285. He's a nice little guy to add to our defensive end rotation, who could easily make a roster spot and give you some of what you're missing with Quentin Jefferson with that 3-tech edge flex, even though he has come out and said he doesn't like playing the 3-tech.
Well, I think it's a much lower investment for potentially the same type of production, if not more, than what you got out of Quentin Jefferson, right? I mean, you look at this guy. I mean, to me, he's definitely better suited to be rushing the passer. You look at his PFF grades from last year; he's actually 20th out of 110 qualifying edge defenders as far as his pass rush grade. So you like to see that. His run grade obviously wasn't great, but you like to see that pass rush grade, because for me, that's what I'm looking for right now when the Bills are going after edge guys. We want somebody with some of that pass rush pop. We've got, Epinesa on one edge who we, feel pretty good about as far as being sturdy against the run. We've got guys like Addison who are pretty sturdy against the run. Like, so I want a guy that can get after the passer a little bit with some inside outside moves. And Obada seems to be that guy in a low risk move. So I really like it. He's still young, and what a success story if it ends up working out for him in the Bills. Like, that would also be something that we look back on and say, like, he really kind of fit the mold of what the Bills organizationally were looking for in a player, and kind of that success story panning out. So I'm with you. I think it's another good sort of low risk move.
And it's such a high ceiling too. And Damon Talbot over at Draft Diamonds, the man has been on fire. He's a must follow for Bills Mafia this offseason. With all this COVID stuff, this guy's in contact with agents. Like, he knows what's up. We don't get to see the guys coming in for the visit. Some of these big time reporters like Schefter and Rappaport, they're not getting in on these scoops. But a guy like Damon has those contacts, and he is getting on these scoops. And he's a Bills fan, so he's got his ears to the ground for any Bills news. He said, listen, 4 or 5 teams were in after Obada. He chose Buffalo not because they offered him the most money, but because he thinks they offered him the best opportunity. So there's Brandon Beane again and that culture again. And for those of people who say the Carolina connection, Obada wasn't added to the Panthers roster until 2 months after Brandon Beane left. So there's no Brandon Beane connection there, even though he probably does have some familiarity with him and some friends in the house over there. But you mentioned this, the statistics in his limited time, they speak for himself. The fact he's been playing limited football. This is another guy, both him and Breida could either come in and be solid rotational pieces, or we could hit gold with one of these two guys and they could really break out in 2020. The ceiling is there for both of these guys to be more than just rotational players, which is what you got to love if you're a Buffalo Bills, and what you got to love getting these guys this late into free agency. Low ball or Bean stepping up. We're going to bring on our special guest, John Todd from Sports Information Solutions in just 1 second, because now that we have all these free agents in the house, we can start talking draft and best player available and who we think the Buffalo Bills are going to go after. So we're going to get John's perspective on a lot of these draft prospects. But before we do, we got a couple of super chats here. One, John DeMarchi coming in saying, play Oppo DC for a minute, or opposing DC for a minute, defensive coordinator. Bills spread you out with Beasley and Sanders, Diggs and Davis, or even Knox if it's 11 personnel. And in the backfield, you have 216-pound Josh Allen and breakaway Breida. Good luck defending that, plus the O-line LFG. Yeah, I'm with you. And the Buffalo Bills just keep adding weapons, because guess what? You could also throw Emmanuel Sanders out there. Or you could throw Zach Moss out there. And if there's a big enough hole because you're worried about the receiver, Zach Moss is the kind of dude who can run you over. He likes you to make business decisions. So the Buffalo Bills just have so many toys to play with. And compared to where we were in Josh Allen's rookie year, when it was like Andre Holmes and Kelvin Benjamin, it's insane the moves the Buffalo Bills have made. And you can't give anyone else any more credit than you can Brandon Beane. And then Andrew Miller coming in saying, would have rather had Clowney, Kerrigan, Dunlap over Obada, but they weren't from Carolina. Shaking my head. If Beane has a weakness, it's that. Like I said, no connection to Brandon Beane. Too much.
He's also going to be the cheapest out of all of those guys you mentioned.
Going to be the cheapest. And honestly, I think other than Dunlap, I think he's got higher upside. Like, you know what Kerrigan is at this point in his career. You know what Clowney is. You also know what Dunlap is. And I think Dunlap I think you know what you're getting with Dunlap after what he did with Seattle. So, having Obada there, he's rejoining Eric Washington, said David Arizi. So it just makes too much sense. And you gotta love the kid's story too, from being trafficked to London, to living on the streets, to where he is now. Just a crazy story. Both him and Breida, both process guys. Breida grew up in foster homes. He was adopted. Apparently he becomes a pillar of every community he goes to, and he works with kids in foster homes and kids who have been adopted. So two very processy community guys the Buffalo Bills are adding. All right. We are going to bring on our special guest for this evening right now. We made him wait an extra 5 minutes, so we do apologize. Let me shift the graphics around here, and we'll bring on John Todd from Sports Information Solutions. How you doing, John?
I'm good. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we are excited to have you. So talk a little bit about what Sports Information Solutions is for the people who don't know. But honestly, if they don't know who you are, they should get on Amazon right now and head over and buy your draft guide, because it is must read for the draft season. So talk about what SIS does.
Yeah, so SIS is first and foremost an analytics company. We chart data. We bring in video scouts every year to chart every NCAA and NFL football game every season. Goes through 5 different passes plus auditing and everything, looking at a number of different things from offense to defense to participation data with snap counts and player alignments and timing data and all that kind of stuff. So first and foremost, we're a charting operation where we create these. On the front end, we chart these statistics live during those games. We get sent to the R&D department, which puts them together and spits out all these proprietary metrics that we send out to teams and media clients and available for the public, and put them in the handbook here. And then separately, myself and one other colleague, Nathan Cooper, are big into the whole draft universe. I mean, everybody, as we all love the draft. We came to SIS as guys that love the draft and love scouting and everything, but knowing that this was more of a numbers company. We wanted to be able to tie in our love for scouting somehow. as we'd have it. Our boss is Matt Manicherian, who was a scout with the Saints and Browns for a number of years, runs our football and R&D departments together. And so obviously he has that tie to scouting as well. So we've been able to create this handbook the past 3 years of that does just that. It ties those two things together. It ties in the analytics that we charted all season. So if you go into the book, it has a number of different things from in-depth research projects done by our R&D staff about projecting injury risk and levels of turf injuries and a number of different random things like that, QB accuracy, in-depth projects and things. We also have team pages for one of every 32 teams in the NFL that break down a number of different stats that we chart all year, from things as simple as personnels to percentage of man versus zone running schemes, man versus zone on defense, blitz percentages, things like that. And then, of course, we have over 300 players that we've written up scouting-wise at the end of the book for this year's draft class. That on one side of the page is the scouting report. We go through a scout school process that Matt and myself and Nate teach our incoming scouts how to write scouting reports from the process that Matt learned in the NFL, from Michael Lombardi and all these great people that he was with in the NFL, a number of different places, the kind of Patriot style of scouting, how to write reports, things like that. And on the other side of the page is the metrics that we charted all season. So you kind of get the blend of both. If you read the report, the guy who wrote that guy's report didn't really like him too much, you go to the numbers, they might tell a different story. And so we kind of present both options to the reader. Sometimes they match up, sometimes they don't. That's kind of the beauty of what we do here.
Yeah, what I really like about it, the book, is it kind of combines the qualitative and the quantitative as far as like the scouting report and then the metrics, and you can kind of see how all those things line up. And I think that, one of the things we're going to get to tonight is talking about how to use some of that information to see where maybe guys are undervalued in the wider draft community right now. And I know what's on a lot of people's minds right now for the Bills is, and maybe it's dampened a little bit today, but like Steve said, like running back is a hot topic right now for the Bills. And it was linked today. Was it Tony Pauline, I believe, said that the Bills were interested in Najee Harris, potentially drafting him. So what does the scouting report say from SIS on Najee Harris, and where does he kind of slot in with the other top backs like Travis Etienne and Javonte Williams?
Yeah, so we have Najee Harris as one of only 7 prospects in the class that received a 7.0 grade or higher, based on our scouting scale, which again is taken from a number of teams. About half the league uses the scouting scale that we use. Based on our scouting scale, it's role-based scouting. So we're not projecting a first-round player, a second-round player. That can be pretty subjective, especially year to year with different classes. That can mean a different thing. When I say it, player's a second-round grade, that means something different for me to you. So we do role-based scouting based on, and it can be tougher because we don't have a team that we're projecting it to. We're just writing in general, which is why the handbook is so big, because for some teams, you have a starting level cornerback in a zone scheme, and other teams, you have a starting level corner in a man scheme. We have both of them as potentially starting level players, but they won't naturally be on the same team's board based on the scheme that they run. So that's kind of we go there. But so yeah, we have 7 players in the draft that reach that 7.0, which is a scheme doesn't matter whatsoever. They're Pro Bowl level and above, like legitimate Pro Bowl level, not the whole 5th alternate kind of thing. And so he's one of the elite guys in the class, we think. He's our number 1 running back. Almost never left the field for Alabama, which is ridiculous with all the running backs by committee you see around the college football and the NFL these days. Especially for a school like Alabama, where they've got just 5 stars like crazy waiting in the wings that are looking to get a snap here and there. He literally never left the field. They'd give Brian Robinson a drive here and there, but first down, second down, third down, proved it across the board. Prototypical size, great lower half. Seen some pictures of his quads going around for his pro day and stuff. He's not a dynamic game breaker in the open field. But that's pretty much the only thing you can say negatively. I say in the report there, doesn't hit a lot of home runs, but he hits a lot of doubles, if you know what that means. I mean, he's just going to grind down defenses, move the chains. He can work in the running game, power scheme, zone scheme. Alabama did it all, inside, outside. He can work in the pass game. He's a natural receiver. They didn't just throw him checkdowns. They throw him out wide. They actually schemed him up some stuff. And then you can pass protect a bit too. That's something that he's got to learn a bit more because of how many RPOs they ran. But he's a special guy. So he's our number one running back. And then we have.
Now, are there any other running backs that are 7-0? Because like we have a question here from Manny. Are there who are the other players you have this year?
Give us an idea of like where you guys have Najee. Who are the other 6 players in that category with him?
Off the top of my head, Trevor Lawrence. We have Jalen Waddle and Jamar Chase. We have Kyle Pitts, Penei Sewell. Defensively, I'm not sure. Patrick Surtain. Okay. Our other 7-0 graded players.
Interesting.
So it's an elite crop there. Those are the top end guys. Again, obviously, those 7 guys aren't going to be the first 7 picks in the draft. We're role based scouting here. Naturally, a 7-0 running back is going to go much later than a 7-0 quarterback.
Yeah. What you're saying is if Najee Harris on the board at 30 and you're Brandon Bean, you're pulling the trigger, huh?
Yeah, it's interesting because it goes into running back value and stuff as well. For me personally, I'm not a big running back in the first round guy, except for the situation that I was listening to you guys talk about with the Bills. When you're a deep into the playoff caliber team and you're looking to just find that last piece, I don't have a problem with going and getting your guy. If you think that he's the final piece of the offense, you have such a great offense, you're just looking for that final piece of a guy who within that rookie contract, again, we're trying not to pay running backs in their second contracts, all that kind of the new age way of doing things. If you think within that rookie contract of the running back, you're not going to pay a guy in a second contract. You're looking for a game changer that's going to really take your offense to the next level and be that final piece, then I think it's definitely open. Definitely an open possibility.
There's a lot of people in Bills Mafia are on the Travis Etienne train. They're big fans of Travis Etienne. And for me, I look at Travis Etienne and I see why people like him. They get really enthralled with that linear speed. Talk about why Travis Etienne is not a 7.0, where you guys have him ranked, what he does well, and maybe some of the weaknesses to Etienne's game.
Yeah, so we actually have Etienne probably lower than a lot of people do. We have him as our number 3 running back. We have Javonte Williams as our number 2. And again, based on the role-based scouting, you guys big Javonte guys, I'm a huge Javonte guy.
Yeah,
huge.
We are. Yeah.
Love it. So again, going back to this role-based scouting way we do things, 6, 7, and above across the board for every position is pretty much a scheme non-dependent player. Or a role non-dependent player. Like you're not going in on just passing downs or just running downs. You're going to have kind of a by committee system or have to play just in the slot or anything like that. So we think Javonte and Najee are the 2 guys in this class that can play on all 3 downs right away, no problem. Javonte might be the best pass protecting back in the class. Obviously, ridiculous downhill thumper, the whole thing. We can talk about him, but not Etienne. We have him as a 6'6", which is just under that grade. We see him as more of a first and second down guy who's going to have some issues on third down. So he can play on third down. But despite you see the high catch numbers and everything, you think he's going to be elite receiver. They didn't use him as a matchup weapon. Most of his receiving production that he had was on screen passes. He's a liability as a pass protector. And we see him more scheme dependent on as a running back as well. We think he's more of a zone runner than a power runner. Had some timing issues and things behind pulling guards and kind of getting that tempo going behind the line, being patient and waiting things to open up that way. Much better in a zone scheme. Obviously, that lateral speed is exciting. He's a decent tackle breaker, but again, he's got much more slender size than those other 2 guys where he's more of the beat your tackling angles before you get there, then break you in between the tackles and manufacture stuff for himself that way. Whereas those first 2 guys are able to manufacture yards for themselves, which is always something that I look for. So, you're going to be enticed by Etienne. Obviously, he did not have as good a year this past year. Those first 3 years are fantastic. But, he's a bit more scheme-dependent, role-dependent than we see the other 2 guys for sure.
We have a super chat coming in from one of our viewers, John DeMarschi. Just bought your book, might I add. He mentioned that earlier in the comment section. He says, edge guys, who do you love? I know that you gave us a list of players you scouted. I don't think there was any edge guys on there, but I'm sure you're familiar with the class. I personally I know that Dan Morgan was at Texas's Pro Day, and I know the Buffalo Bills have met with Joe Tryon. So Joseph Osai and Joe Tryon are the two guys who I think the Buffalo Bills could be honing on. But who are some guys that you would like in that range where the Buffalo Bills are picking late first, second round type of edge rushers who can make an impact? And what do you think about Osai and Tryon specifically?
Yeah, so our number one edge rusher is Jalen Phillips. That's not everybody has that, but we're big fans of Jalen Phillips. He definitely could be the pick at number 30 if they wanted to go that direction. Serious injury issues early in his career at UCLA, and then transferred. He even had to retire at one point. So that's going to definitely need to be vetted out. But transferred, stepped in. Greg Rousseau sat out this season and filled in fantastically. Had 8 sacks, 35 total pressures, and he led the class in run defense total points. I can get into kind of our metric there, but can kind of do it all. He needs to work on his repertoire and stuff, but he's one of these guys that has all the tools. Jason Owe is a guy that I'm another big fan of. Obviously, he had his pro day today, and people are talking about him. You don't want to count it twice. I always say that in scouting, that I knew that he was going to run really fast. Like in all my research of him and everything, I was expecting him to run the 4.3s, and you try not to get enthralled when you see he actually does it. But I mean, you see that on film. I remember specifically him outrunning Lamont Wade full speed, the safety at Penn State. And then I look at their 40 times a day and he ran a full tenth of a second faster than Lamont Wade. I'm like, yeah, it checks out. So you don't want to count it twice, but it's hard not to get excited when you see that kind of stuff from a guy his size. The sack production is not a big concern for me. He was up there in kind of the pressure rates and everything that you're looking for, just didn't kind of convert this past season. He's very football young. So he's got a big future. And then, so Osai, you mentioned there, really, really interesting prospect. We have him as a low-end starter, more in a 3-4 scheme, as a stand-up guy, because he was a stand-up guy, not just a stand-up edge player. But in 2019, he legitimately played will linebacker. He was in the slot. I mean, he was covering guys, playing the flats, kind of being moved all over the place, legitimate stand-up, off-the-ball linebacker. And then on third downs, he'd reduce down and play like a stand-up edge role. I believe he only rushed maybe 46% of the time in 2019. Truly like a part-time scheme-specific edge rusher, but he kind of did it all. Then this past season, he moved into like a true edge rusher role. Incredibly athletic, but very raw. Obviously, he's an edge rusher. Much easier to move forward when you're moving from further away from the ball, closer to the ball. It's much harder to move from an edge rusher to a will linebacker when you have more space to look at. So it's something that we think that he can figure out. I mean, with that athleticism and his ridiculous motor, that's the thing that jumps out to you is got a ridiculous motor in the athleticism, but he's really got to work on developing his hand usage, his repertoire, plan of attack, all that stuff. But that motor, that athleticism, the ability in space, the natural ability in space that he has, where a guy like Jason Owe, who, I mean, he's just a former basketball player who they just put his hand in the dirt and never have him move backwards and figure it out. Those kind of traits for Osai are ones that we think that he'll end up figuring out. He's going to be obviously chess piece on passing downs right away. That's going to be something where you could drop him in coverage, you can blitz him, you can do a lot of different things that way. But he's going to need some development as a pass rusher. I mean, obviously, people look at the Tevin Jenkins matchup that it really struggled against Oklahoma State there. A guy who's much more physical than he is. So that's something that he's going to need to improve on, his anchor strength and things like that.
Well, I want to ask you, because a lot of people are falling in love with Osai, and like you said in the beginning, like, do you think he is a fit for the Bills? The Bills run that 4-3 sort of cover 2 style zone defense. And when I looked at Osai, I also thought that he looked more kind of like a 3-4 sort of stand-up linebacker. So is there a path for him to sort of become that sort of 4-3 down lineman on the edge in the Bills scheme? And is that something that, given the other options that are going to be out there at the edge, should the Bills even go that route, or should they take a guy that's more like ready for their scheme?
Yeah, it's interesting because his biggest weaknesses are going to be bulking up that anchor strength, playing against the run, which again, I mean, you look at the Bills roster, you took an Epinesa who kind of fills that role. You're looking for guys that all kind of fit pieces of a puzzle together. You always talk about kind of building your receiving core as a basketball team. You can think of edge rushers that way too if you want to, where not everybody has to look exactly the same. You've got guys in different roles. Epinesa, more of the early down guy. You can bring in Osai as the third down guy potentially. But again, 3-4-4-3, the lines are getting blurred a bit, but he is going to need to be a guy that you're not just using as a hand in the dirt, move forward. His best assets are going to be moving all over the place, being used as in coverage, having kind of that versatility where there's other guys, other 4-3, more 4-3 ready guys now that have a bit more of that bulk that can project as maybe a pass rushing complement.
We had a 4-3. We had a guy here under Rex Ryan who had a lot of success in Lorenzo Alexander. And one of the things that a lot of Bills fans thought when Sean McDermott got here was, what is Lorenzo Alexander going to do? Because he had some of his best career numbers under Rex Ryan. In fact, he had a career resurgence. Could a guy like Joseph Asai, maybe the Buffalo Bills could be looking to use him in base 43 formations as a strong side backer, a guy who can drop back into coverage, a guy who can, A gap and B gap blitz, a guy who can come off the edge. Could Osai be a guy who maybe in a 43 could play maybe not the weak side, but he could play the strong side?
For sure. I can see that for sure. You're looking for guys that can do a bit of everything. Leslie Frazier's an inventive defensive coordinator. I'm a big fan of Leslie Frazier, where he's looking for guys that you're not just looking for cookie cutter roles. If you get a guy like Osai who can maybe do a little bit of everything, you bring him in a base defense, but you still don't know what he's going to do. That adds that extra level of mismatch. To when he's on the field, he's not just putting his hand down and blitzing. He's not just coming in as a linebacker and dropping in coverage. He can do a little bit of everything. And again, like with that athleticism and the motor, that's going to get you on the field right away while you figure everything else out. That'll help you right away.
We have to ask because
comment section wants
it. They want to know what was your grade on Josh Allen.
Interesting. Josh Allen, was that 3 years ago or 4 years ago now?
That would have been.
It was 18, right? 2018?
2017, I thought. Oh no, yeah, 2018.
First handbook was 2019. We do have a previous one, Nathan Cooper. If Nathan Cooper was here, who kind of started the whole process, had his handbook, and I think he was actually pretty high. I think Josh Allen, one of the two guys that worked with Nate on that book, was a huge Josh Allen fan. So I will say that. But yeah, we don't have you can't go back in the archives and hot take us on that one, right? Cold takes
from the ire of the comment section for today.
Yeah.
All right. So what about Joe Tryon? Because that's another guy that the Bills have been linked to. Where does he kind of rate for you? What position do you see him kind of moving to in the NFL? Because he's another guy to me that kind of like looks like a 3-4 outside linebacker on the surface, but him and Osai, at least in my mind, seem physically somewhat similar. So am I onto something there, or am I dead wrong with that?
No, 100%. They're very similar players. I would say the only difference there is that Tryon might be more of the pass rush ready player. He's got more of the get off. He's got more of like the natural. He's got the athleticism and everything, but that's more built towards pass rush right away. He does not have the coverage skills that Osai would. So that's kind of the bit of difference there. But again, they're both motor dependent, athleticism and motor dependent players, where Tryon's got the get off, the motor and energy, the attacking mindset. And he's lacking some of that repertoire, the plan of attack, some of the block shedding and the run discipline and things like that. So very similar players from that end. Osai is more of the chess piece a bit that could be played more off the ball. But again, they're both guys that did some of both. So Tryon was a guy who was about 50% stand up and hand in the dirt. When he played, obviously he opted out. And Osai was obviously very much a 2-point stance guy for much of his career. But again, there's a bit more of Tryon is more of the ready-made pass rusher while he's using those athletic traits and that motor and everything just to get after the quarterback. Whereas Osai is going to be figuring out the pass rush stuff while he can drop a little bit. He can be moved around some, but using a lot of those similar traits for sure. And we have them both as 6'5" grades, which is, again, third down specialists, if you wanted to say that. Yeah, same grade. Third down specialists, maybe not full 3-down players, but third downs, they're going to come in nickel packages and have a role on passing downs.
Where does Zaven Collins fit into that role? Where do you have him slotted compared to a guy like Osai or Tryon? Because I know, Collins is more of more of a unicorn. Like this is a dude who could play weak side. He could probably play middle. He could probably play strong side. He could probably put his hand down, play defensive end. So Zaven's a little bit more of a unicorn maybe than these two guys. But where do you have Zaven Collins compared?
So we have Zaven Collins as our third will linebacker. We have him as 6'7" grade. A very interesting guy. Obviously, I mean, Tulsa broke out this season. You talk about like the Owusu-Koramoah types, and normally will linebackers, when you look at them, they're a bit lighter guys. Obviously, Owusu-Koramoah might be straight up a safety. I mean, at his lighter weight, we're talking about that.
Yeah.
Look at Zaven Collins at 260 pounds, and he's a will linebacker. He excels in coverage. All those kinds of things. It's actually interesting that more of the weaker side of his game is kind of the physicality at the point of attack, even though he's 260 pounds. But that being a weakness at this point gives you hope that at least he has the size to figure that out, and he can bulk up and just keep kind of working on that. And he at least has the body type to handle that. Whereas you're figuring Owusu-Koramoah is not going to be a guy who's ever going to really thrive in the box. Or at least that's not where you need to put him. But yeah, Zaven Collins is a fantastic coverage linebacker. Special speed and athleticism at his size. He always looked like he was the most athletic guy in the field, which is crazy. Has blitz ability as well. Yeah, he's a guy that you can do a little bit of everything with too. He can come off the edge, not a natural pass rusher, but again, those athletic traits, he had plenty of experience doing it. And yeah, he would be a guy who could play, he could transition into a Mike role if he kind of took more control of that instinctual between the tackles, sniffing out run plays inside instead of just relying on athleticism outside the box. But yeah, I mean, he's kind of the most interesting guy in terms of the size and athleticism combination for an off-ball will linebacker.
Mm-hmm. Let's shift the focus here from the defensive side of the football to offense. And I know the Buffalo Bills just re-signed Isaiah McKenzie, and they also have Emmanuel Sanders, and their receiver room is loaded. But there's a guy that you scouted that's always piqued my curiosity, and I've been struggling to sort of put words to this prospect. So I want to hear what you have to say, being someone who has, I think you mentioned you're the one who did his mock-up, and that is Dax Milne from BYU. How do you have Dax Milne graded, and where do you see him sort of going in this draft?
Yeah, so we have Dax Milne pretty low just in the overall spectrum. We have 48 receivers graded. It's a ton of guys in there. We have him as like a number 4 receiver, not somebody that you're going to really seek out and draft necessarily. But I just kept telling myself as I was watching him and then through our whole process of ranking guys and stuff, I just think Dax Milne is going to go in like the 5th, 6th, 7th round and make a team and find a role and never give it up. He's going to be playing in the league for a long time. We talk about all these athletic guys and these freaks and stuff like that. He's the opposite of that. He's a former walk-on, he's not just a former walk-on who worked his way up. Like he immediately, true freshman year, saw the field and started playing. And obviously his junior year became Zach Wilson's go-to guy at receiver as this kind of average-sized receiver from BYU with very minimal athletic traits. I kind of comped him to, I did Andy Isabella's report as well. He's not running a 4.3 Andy Isabella, basically, in that I think they're both undersized guys, nothing special athletically, but the route detail, the footwork that they use, the subtleties in their routes, the savviness, the head nods, the ability to separate without having that athleticism to separate naturally, is going to do him wonders at the next level. He's got good hands, not the strongest guy. Obviously, he's not going to like out jump guys at the catch point and make plays, exceptional plays outside of his radius, but strong hands underneath. They used him on gadget plays a lot. And then the thing that I just kept coming back to, the thing that I loved is that obviously mediocre size and everything, but just winning plays, the blocking for a guy who's not that huge, the extra effort plays downfield. He sprung a ton of huge runs and everything from the backside just because he hustled to the front side and made a block. Played special teams, all that's like he just every single time he's a go-to guy on critical situations, on third downs, was a go-to target when he's actually being thrown the ball. And then when he's not throwing the ball, he's running every route hard. I had some other guys that I'm big fans of athletically and Kadarius Toney types and things like that where, I mean, their peak is exceptional, but they're not running every route hard. If you're not the number 1 target, you can tell sometimes when these guys aren't an early progression, basically. You can never tell when Dax Milne was an early progression or not. runs every route hard, and then when he doesn't get the ball, he goes and blocks the guy and tries to find a way to spring a teammate. So again, he's not going to be a very highly rated guy. He's not a highly rated guy in the book. I don't think he's going to get drafted super high. I think somebody will fall in love with him. I'm sure he's probably a good interview. Some coaches, it's one of those where the scouting staff might not be a huge fan, and the coaching staff comes in and sees like, gosh, I need this guy on my team. And he's going to find a role somewhere, I think.
The thing that I was intrigued by was a lot of their plays at BYU. You know, Zach Wilson is scrambling out and he finds him. It's sort of like the play breaks down, and Dax Milne sort of is just in sync with Wilson, and they find him for he would find him for a touchdown on sort of like he would reroute himself and he would find the open spot in the field. With a quarterback like Josh Allen who scrambles out of the pocket as well too, sort of that sort of nuance and ability to find the open spot. That's what intrigued me the most about Dax Milne. Like thinking about him with Josh Allen in order sort of that what's I'm looking for here, but that just sort of making decisions on the move, on the fly that those two could do together. It seems like
the off script playmaking for Zach Wilson, like they're very similar with Zach Wilson. Actually, it's interesting comp there. Like it's because he runs every route hard and because he's always working hard through the play, even when he doesn't get the ball, and he's just always finding ways to get himself open. So I can see that 100%.
Got a couple people in here asking for I know you guys have a Twitter. Do you guys have like an Instagram or a website, and plug your book real quick before we get into the next couple prospects we want to talk about.
Yeah. So sportsinfo_SIS is our Twitter account. The main thing is, I'm obviously huge in the handbook and the editing of the handbook and stuff, but just because I had meetings about it all day today, we're about to post our job posting for this upcoming fall, for upcoming video scouts. And I run the recruiting for our upcoming video scouts. So if anybody is interested in certainly the charting operation, that's what we hire for, but interested in contributing to the book next season, going through our scout school process and kind of doing that on the side and kind of getting the taste of both worlds there. Be on the lookout for our job posting. It'll be coming out either tomorrow or Monday, I think. Sportsinfosolutions.com. It'll be posted on Teamwork Online, I'm sure, a number of places like that. But our careers page, you can go check it out, and I'll be the one to review your stuff if you want to be a contender for this season's job.
Got a question here from one of the founders of our establishment here, Buffalo Fanatics. He says, what's the process you guys go through when you miss on a player's evaluation?
It's interesting because Nate and I we're the ones, we have video scouts that are contributing to the book every year. They come and go. Obviously last year's scouts have already gone. They'll be getting their handbooks soon. We're shipping them out soon. So from their standpoint, it's just about self-evaluation. From our standpoint, it's the big thing is with self-evaluation. I'm always trying to get better. I'm always looking back on guys that I've missed on, guys that I graded highly that I was a big fan of, that hit. I'm trying to think of some off the top of my head, but it's always about getting better. And it's always about, especially because we're charting college and NFL every year. So that helps us stay within the sport, stay within watching tape every year of the NFL and college. So we get that taste. I've heard this from a number of different people after the draft every year, watching the best players in the NFL, watching some tape of the top guys at those positions and seeing what it's supposed to look like, reminding yourself if you've been watching so much college tape, going to NFL tape and seeing what it's supposed to look like and kind of recalibrating your mind from that standpoint. That's a big thing that I like to do is just kind of recharge and try to figure out why I missed on guys. Again, the hardest thing for our standpoint is that we're not grading for a specific role. We're grading for roles in general. So a lot of this depends on where guys gets taken. If we grade that 6'6" cornerback that we think is zone dependent and he gets drafted to a man coverage team predominantly and he flames out, the 6'6" was more based on he gets to the right scheme. This is what he could have been. And it just didn't work out for whatever reason. And then sometimes you grade him as 6'6", he goes to his own team and it just doesn't work out for whatever reason. A big portion that we're doing is we don't take injuries into account. We don't take, obviously, interviews and off-field stuff. Like we're not privy to all that information. We do have a very in-depth injury department. So in the handbook, we have injury stuff laid out for every player. But we don't let that impact our evaluation. We're kind of looking at the best case scenario. If this guy's healthy, this is what he's going to be. So yeah, it's a lot of, there's nothing maybe specific. We do kind of recalibrate with Matt every season as well to adjust our grading, our grades, our ranks, trying to stay up with the times of potentially adding a grade here or rewording a factor grade that we're using or anything like that to kind of stay updated and make sure we're putting out the best product possible.
So John, we every show we do like a mock draft at the end of the show. But before we get to that, because we kind of wanted to surprise you with this, so like you're gonna do it with us tonight for the Bills. I want to ask you, and people are probably gonna ask, corner is on the mind fans now after signing the running back. One technique defensive line is still on the mind, and running back is still probably on some people's mind. So maybe take us through a couple of guys that those are being generally undervalued in the wider draft community today. I know you already mentioned Javonte Williams at running back as your number 2 running back, and Steve and I both really like Javonte, might even have him as our number 1. But that's kind of blasphemous right now to talk about because most people kind of have Etienne and Harris as the top 2. So who are a couple maybe corners that you like who may be being undervalued right now, and maybe a couple of interior defensive linemen that are being undervalued?
Yeah, so I mean, we can go a number of different ways here. Cornerback, a guy that I wrote down is to circle back to kind of the whole difference in the eye versus metric scouting or the analytics scouting that we're talking about here, the handbook, what the handbook presents both sides. Shakur Brown at Michigan State was a guy that I wrote up personally and was not a huge fan of, but he's 4th in the class in our total points metric, which, just to give a very brief mention of that, it's kind of our main proprietary metric that you hear. Kind of takes all of the charting data that we've used of player alignments and context of what happened on the play and what teammates did and melds it all into one number, basically. So a quick example, like you have a 50-yard, we never look at anything as just a 50-yard touchdown pass. Was it a 50-yard pass where the left tackle blew a block and the quarterback's facing pressure and got flushed out and chucked it 50 yards? Or was it a screen pass where the receiver was first contacted behind the line and broke 3 tackles and then ran 55 yards for a touchdown? Those total points numbers are very different for the quarterback, obviously, for valuation there. So Shakur Brown was 4th in the class in total points for us from that metric, even though I wasn't a huge fan of his. Tied for 2nd in run defense and 5th for coverage. So he was kind of across the board. Active, very feisty zone cornerback. I saw him specifically as a zone corner. Good ball skills, great closing speed, very physical to a fault. Way too many assignment lapses for me. He kind of lost track of guys that he shouldn't have. He would let bad plays spill over into the next play. I saw too many of that stuff that, again, maybe these metrics that we have can't pick up on necessarily. Not the quickest reactive athlete and off coverage, which is a big thing that you look for. So I think he could be good if he can clean up some of that stuff. But there's one that, based on our grade, he's a bit lower. But based on the metrics that we're looking at, he's a pretty highly rated guy that the metrics that could be a steal for somebody. And an interior rusher, an interesting guy would be Raymond Johnson from Georgia Southern, kind of going off the beaten path. I could go Aleem McNeil, who's our number 1 nose tackle, who I think's a really interesting guy. Yeah,
I'm an NC State guy, so I was going to ask you, like, Aleem's number 1 on your list there.
He gives me Chris Jones vibes when I watch him.
He's interesting, a rounder Chris Jones.
Yeah.
Yeah, Aleem McNeil, just to touch on him real quick. He's it's the quick hands off the snap where, I mean, you watch him every play. There was Jimmy Morrissey I saw at Pitt was the only center that matched him at all with center moves the ball. Immediately McNeil's hand is on the center and he's compromised from the jump. And then from there, he's just a load to handle. He can one gap, he can 2 gap, he can penetrate upfield, he can be a fire hydrant, he can do whatever you want him to. He's not going to really make many plays outside the tackles, even though he used to be, in my research, he used to be like an outfielder and like a short yardage running back in high school and like scored 40 touchdowns or something crazy. Like he's got kind of a athletic background, but he's put on a few pounds. But to go a bit more off the beaten path real quick, Raymond Johnson from Georgia Southern is a guy that our scouts that wrote him up were a bit split on him. So his grade's kind of low, but in my cross check of him, I was an interesting big fan of his. Ridiculously consistent production for a 4-year starter at Georgia Southern. Nobody's really ever talked about him, but all 4 years, he had about the same production every season. 6'2.5", 260, good length. He was mostly a 5-tech every year. There was kind of a question of if he's going to be an edge. Is he going to be an interior guy? We graded him as an interior guy, more as a 3-tech, 5-tech, more like a 5-tech that can reduce down a little bit if he can bulk up some. But quick hands, improved anchor stoutness. He could be a nice interior mismatch against guards. And again, you just kind of like you're watching these small school guys, and he's clearly a guy for 4 years. He stood out. Very consistent guy, and somebody, I think he had a good pro day recently as well. We grade him as a top backup player, one position guy who's just going to be kind of, we don't think he has the athleticism to hang out on the edge. So we bump him inside and maybe get kind of a more versatile piece inside there.
Can I run some quickly, because I know we don't want to waste too much of your time here, before we get to this mock draft and close things out? Can I just run some other names in Bills Mafia that is just in every single mock draft and just get your sort of quick, opinion of these players? The first one is Hamza Nasidrolin from Florida State University. Everyone in Buffalo wants that Buffalo nickel, that big nickel, that big slot type of player. Where does Hamza fit in? Is he a guy that could make an impact in that kind of role?
Yeah, we have him as just that. We have him as 6'4" safety, which is a number 3 safety, a nickel safety, basically a box guy for some guys. Low end starting safety. We see him as a chess piece, versatility, athleticism. At his size, he can play man coverage in the slot. His most productive season was in 2019 when he was playing deep safety. We think he's going to be more of a box safety, but 89 tackles in 2018, 103 in 19. We are a bit concerned that he came back fairly slowly from the ACL injury. He was playing, but he just he never really returned to form. Looked a step slower. That's kind of something that we're hoping as he gets further out from that injury, he's going to kind of regain that athleticism. But he's at his best closer to the line, man coverage, run defense, make more of a play-to-play impact than just dropping into a deep zone. Aggressive, intelligent, productive tackler. Doesn't really have the natural coverage instincts right now, but if he can return to form there, he's going to be a guy. And then similar to him would be Talanoa Hufanga is a very similar mold to that as well. Kind of a big nickel linebacker. I'm a big fan of Talanoa. He misses way too many tackles for as many tackles as he makes. He's pretty reckless, but man, if you're looking for a tone setter on defense, a guy who's going to play in that kind of intermediate zone range, guy that's just going to play underneath and stay around the ball and blitz and just kind of be a maniac off the ball. Those two guys are good bets there.
We have our resident South Carolinian in here asking, how does Hamza stack up to Mukuama from South Carolina?
We have Mukuamu as a 6'2", which is a versatile corner or safety guy that you can kind of roll to either spot, but again, lower than a 6'4", where he's a true third safety. He's going to have a role there specifically. There's more kind of maybe a nickel or a dime guy, versatile reserve that way. He's a ball hawk, obviously. We ended up grading him as a safety. That was kind of a big question, safety versus corner. And the scout that wrote his report ended up moving him to safety, which is interesting. Ball skills, range, versatility. I think he's inconsistent outside in man coverage, so he's going to be more of the slot to safety versatility there. Not a great tackler, limited physicality, but we like Hamza a little bit more based on his role and athleticism that way. But we have Mukuamu pretty highly as well.
There's two guys from Syracuse University that have met with the Buffalo Bills in Melifonwu and Trill Williams. Can you talk about those two guys real quick?
Yeah, Melifonwu was our top non-6'7" cornerback. We talk about these grades of 6'7" being like the cutoff of number 1, number 2 receiver, number 1, number 2 cornerback, like solid starter regardless of scheme. He's a 6'6". He's just under that. He's our only 6'6" cornerback, so we see him as a number 3. But he has inside-outside flexibility. So you get down to like a 6'4" cornerback, that's a number 3, but inside or outside. He's going to be role specific. Melifonwu's either one. Still a starter, right cornerback for Syracuse, versatile defense, a lot of man and zone, which is always what you're looking for as a guy who's versatile, especially for the Bills who run a lot of both as well. Size and athleticism to match up against big and small receivers, out wide in the slot. He can kind of do it all that way. Good reactive athlete, smooth transition. His best trait is his closing speed. Puts him in good positions to make plays on the ball. He just hasn't converted a lot of those. good play strength against blockers. His run support and tackling are kind of inconsistent, but at least he has the play strength to do that. And he did rate highly when we're going back to our total points metric. He did rate highly in our run defense total points metric. So tied for 4th in class in run defense total points, and then he was 8th best in EPA per target. So some metrics there.
Yeah, I got one more for you too. Actually, 2 more. Going back to our edge rusher discussion, this guy, I like his ability to rush off the edge, but he might have to work on his off the ball stuff because of his size. Chris Rumph from Duke. Where do you guys have Chris Rumph from Duke ranked?
We have him right in that range, I believe, right with Osai and and Tryon, right there with them.
Wow.
And actually, kind of a similar role to Osai. Again, they're different players. Rumph is a very like body type wise, a very different guy from pretty much anybody in this class. He's very unique when you look at him on film. Rail thin, kind of used more interestingly alignments than you'll see a guy. He kind of stacks behind linebackers and kind of stands up wherever he wants to in the front, which is really interesting, but incredibly raw athlete. Length for days, which is what you're looking for. He's got the twitch. He's kind of got all these tools that you just want to put together. He's another guy that we think is more of a 3-4 outside linebacker. Could be a 4-3 Sam, like we talked about there, if you're looking for that guy for a 4-3 defense as well. He just needs to get an NFL weight room. If he's going to play Sam, he's going to have to be strong enough to line up over a tight end, jam him at the line, which he doesn't have right now. So right now we see him as more of on and off ball kind of versatile guy, but on and off ball in terms of being an edge rusher standing up or a will linebacker maybe to kind of move in space and use his length in space. He's going to have to bulk up a bit to become a Sam, but again, he gets in an NFL weight room and you kind of use him that way. He's one of the more interesting chess piece types in this draft.
All right, last one, and this is one of my personal favorite players in this draft. And I know he's the personal favorite of a lot of people, but I think a lot of people are forgetting about him now that we've re-signed Isaiah McKenzie, and that's Jalen Darden from North Texas. What are your thoughts on Jalen Darden?
Super fast. He's one of the best playmakers in this draft. We got one of the highest playmaking grades. We have factor grades for every position. Mm-hmm. Wide receivers playmaking is one of the grades there, and he received an 8, which is on a 1 to 9 scale. He's excellent grade. Play speed is way up there. Playmaking ability, savvy route runner, quick and elusive. I think he was number 1 in the country in touchdowns this year, or touchdowns per game, whatever that is. We project him as a number 3 receiver. We have a number of guys in that 6'4" range, which is all of our number 3 receivers there. And that can mean a number of different things. It can be outside only, it can be inside only, it can be both, but you're just a number 3 receiver. We see him operating mostly out of the slot, but as a speed weapon outside and within the slot, which is obviously a unique option there. He's not just like a quicker than fast gadget guy. He can be a deep burner from the slot. He can run some routes out wide if you need him to. Run away from the defenders, win with the ball in his hands. Obviously, he's going to manufacture for himself with that speed, but kick and punt return ability as well. Played an interesting offense, but very savvy route runner, knows how to stem his routes, stay away from defenders. And he led a number of our metrics as well. So he's an interesting guy, and obviously high volume this year. He improved every season at North Texas and then exploded this year, 19 touchdowns, I think. High catchable target rate and everything. So, yeah, he's the guy that the film and the numbers matched up.
Interesting. Dave, you got any last prospects throw out there, or is it mock draft season?
It's mock draft.
We can do the mock draft. Yeah.
Let's do it. All right. So
this has become a regular of this show.
Yeah, we do a mock draft at the end of every show, and we're gonna try to get your expertise on this one, John. We're using the TDN mock draft machine. That's what we always use. So I'm gonna go ahead and
you guys
share
working on a mock draft machine over there at SIS?
I personally run through the fan speak one. So again, I mean, I just do this in my free time all the time. If I'm bored on my computer, you just click the bookmarked link and run through one real quick,
What's your team? You have a team?
I grew up in Washington, just outside Washington. So I actually used to work for Washington football team in operations. So
nice.
So I've got an affinity for those guys.
They've had quite an offseason. They got Fitzpatrick now to go along with Gibson. And I really
Curtis
like
Samuel.
Samuel. Why am I forgetting the guy from Ohio State? McLaurin. they just picked up Adam Humphries today. That's a solid trio of receivers.
I got Adam Humphries today. Yeah. You guys were mentioning Lorenzo Alexander. I grew up with Lorenzo on the team. One-man gang. He was the guy.
Yeah.
Played fullback, played tight end, played D tackle, edge, off ball. Yeah. He did everything. He was awesome.
Before we start the mock draft, can I ask you what you think about Kevin Pierre-Louis? Because I know he's not there anymore, but I was like a big Kevin Pierre-Louis fan as a potential Milano replacement. Did you think he was pretty good, or?
I thought he was pretty good. I'm surprised they didn't bring him back. I think they're surprised that they didn't bring him back. I think they wanted him back. He's kind of your typical Will. He played pretty well for us. We went more base than I expected last season. And he was good in coverage. They used him a lot. So yeah, I think they're pretty disappointed they didn't bring him back, but he got a good contract.
Yeah.
All right.
Kendall Mursky coming in. Oh, sorry, real quick. He said you guys had a pretty good, pretty high grade on Isaiah Hodgins. What can the Buffalo Bills expect from Hodgins this year?
Big target. Another guy that we were really high on last year, I meant to mention this, was Gabriel Davis. Nathan Cooper wrote his report last year, and we don't have too many 6'7" receivers every year. We have a handful every year, 6'7" guys, 8 or so. And he was a 6'7" last year and went undrafted and kind of stuck our neck out on that one. And that one hit in a big way. So shout out to Nate for that one. So Isaiah Hodgins is going to be a guy that needs to develop a little bit more. Obviously, I mean, jump ball weapon and everything. And then Gabriel Davis panned out sooner than we probably expected, but that was a big hit for us.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Hodgins in the red zone because you guys broke down his red zone statistics last year. I don't have them in front of me, but they were insane. Like, I saw those red zone statistics for Isaiah Hodgins in his college career, and I just fell in love with the dude when I saw your guys' breakdown of his red zone statistics last year. Just absolutely insane in his college career.
Quick question for some of the people to answer in your highest grade's a 9, correct? So you guys go from essentially from nothing to a 9, I think, right?
For final grades, yeah. So the grading scale technically goes from a 1 to a 9. Pretty much everything is kind of capped out at like a 7.5-ish area. I mean, 9 is like the most perfect prospect who ever lived, and I don't know if that's ever existed. But yeah, I mean, as long as we've been doing the book, we've kind of kept it with like 7.5 is kind of as big as you're going to get. So that's kind of the range there.
Kind of gives you that sort of ceiling to go for once there's like a transcendent type guy.
Yeah, I've heard some people that have used this similar scale in the past that have like everybody has their story of like I gave Reggie Bush an 8 back in the day or whatever, like your highest graded player ever kind of thing. Yeah.
All right, we're going to get this mock started. There will be potentials for trades here, but we're going to draft for the Bills and we're going to get rolling here like we do every show. So hopefully everyone can see this. It's big enough on the screen.
Who's the most overrated player you think? Who do you think is the most overrated player in this draft?
Overrated player. Let me go through our rankings real quick.
I'm not moving up to pick 11. Sorry. I'm going to go ahead and decline that.
I think they wanted our first, second, and our third, and a fifth. Is that what it was?
They wanted, and I think they wanted a pick next year.
We could have gotten JC.
I mean, again, like just quickly looking through this stuff, obviously quarterbacks are a bit different. We have Trey Lance and Mac Jones both at 6'6" quarterbacks, which is a big jump down from we have Zach Wilson and Justin Fields as 6'9" quarterbacks. So there's a big jump there, and it's sounding like all of them are going to go in the top 10, which, again, you understand it. I've got big concerns with Trey Lance personally, and I know others have big concerns with Mac Jones. I'm a decent Mac Jones fan, but again, like I don't think those guys are necessarily top 10 picks, but they're quarterbacks in the NFL. I mean, what are you going to do? Somebody's going to fall in love with them and take a chance on those traits from Trey Lance and hope you can coach him up to that, or the Saban style offense and the pedigree of Mac Jones, you know? So what are you going to do?
All right. So we're sitting here at pick 30. We've got 2 trade offers. First one's from the Giants to move. We're going to move down 12 spots, but pick up a 3rd and send them a 5th. Or we've got another offer from the Falcons to move down only 5 spots and basically trade, get a 4th for a 5th there. So do we like either of those options? Or
getting another Steve? 3rd is pretty intriguing to me. What's the drop down there to pick up an extra 3rd?
12 spots.
I'd consider
12
it.
spots to get a 3rd. 5 spots to get a 4th. Also depends who's there too.
Yeah.
Do you want me to see what's out there?
Let's see see if there's anyone of intrigue on the board.
I'm not sure why it's. Oh, there we go. All right, let's see. Well, Jalen Phillips is on the board, so kind of would Eric Stokes is on the board. How do you guys have Eric Stokes ranked, John?
He's in that 6-7 range for us for cornerbacks.
Okay.
And again, one of the big things that we do is we put out the handbook before. Normally we do it before the combine, but now it's before all these pro days and stuff. As our boss Matt always likes to talk about when he was with the Saints and everything. He tells the story that they would always talk about, take a picture of the draft board that you've created in January and print it in your memory, because this is the last time it's going to look like this. This is the best it's going to look. This is the most perfect it's ever going to be, because we're about to tear it down for the next 4 months with all the talk that goes on in the combine and the pro days and stuff that just muddles it up. The most perfect look at your draft board is going to be what it looks like in January, which is what we try to make the handbook. Take all the testing numbers out of it and everything. Obviously, Eric Stokes tested really well and everything. So try not to let that factor into the handbook, but it is interesting to know, obviously, when you get to the draft.
Well, let's play devil's advocate here. If you had a choice, you're Brandon being the Buffalo Bills, you have a choice between Jalen Phillips and Eric Stokes. Which way are you leaning?
I think I'd lean Phillips. But again, going back to Bill's roster and needs, and if you're looking for the pass rusher versus the cornerback opposite, for us, Phillips is our number one edge.
Yeah, I would go Phillips here.
I think it'd be Phillips. I think he's the pass rushing complement to Epinesa there. We had Epinesa as a solid starter, but a run defender first and foremost, and I think he's a good complement there.
Awesome. Let's do it. Let's pull the trigger.
All right.
No trade backs
All right,
here. No trade backs
going.
today. Maybe trade back up into the second round if we get a good offer.
Well, we know Randy hates that pick because he hates Phillips, but that's fine.
I'm convinced the Bills are going to probably take a guy at 30 and then trade up in the second round. That just seems like a Brandon Beane type of move, but we're not getting any offers.
Again, when you get it kind of into, like we talked about, when you get into this range of, and you guys aren't super used to it. I mean, I'm envious, but you get into that range of you're an elite team, and you're looking to kind of fill out those last puzzle pieces that you're looking for. You kind of can be aggressive.
Yeah, Maligned just went off the board. We didn't get any trade up offers. So it'll be interesting to see.
I guess I'm just going to decline this one. I'm not really interested in moving down 14 spots.
Moves back 14 just for a fifth. Yeah.
Steve, thoughts?
No, decline that, yeah.
All right. So, Davion Nixon's an interesting one. I kind of like him.
Tryon's there.
Tryon is there. Togiai, Tufele. Like you said, Mullen just got picked. So, let's see what the comment section likes here. No one's really commenting yet, but who do you like out of these guys that are kind of on the short list here on TDN, John? Grade wise for you guys, like anybody stand out here that's a kind of like a glaringly like outlier as far as like better rated metric than the rest?
So grading wise, we have Davion Nixon as a 6'7", defensive tackle. Again, it's not the strongest defensive tackle class, but we have him there. Amari Rogers is a 6'4" wide receiver, slot receiver. We have Jabril Cox is, I think, a 6'6", maybe, will linebacker. One of the best coverage linebackers in the draft, for sure. He was high up in all of our metrics for coverage stuff. I think he led every leaderboard we had for that. Brevin Jordan's obviously an elite receiving tight end. But again, kind of in that Dawson Knox mold. I'm a big James Hudson fan as a developmental left tackle. I think he's got a really high ceiling, but he's down in the 6'5" range.
What about Richie Grant? He's a guy that a lot of Bills fans kind of talk about in playing sort of maybe that hybrid role in the secondary. Is he a guy that you guys are high on?
Yeah, we have him in that hybrid role, but we have him in that hybrid role similar to the Mukwamu as a reserve versatile guy, which is again a bit lower than maybe some other people do. We were finishing this up right as the Senior Bowl was coming out, and you're trying not to factor in the Senior Bowl too much because again you kind of watch all the film and then you have the Senior Bowl come out, and you're factoring that in as much as you can, but taking it into context. So, yeah, I mean, ball skills, physicality, communication, the versatility in the back end is what you're looking for. His ability, he played legitimate cornerback at the Senior Bowl and looked awesome. He's one of the better secondary guys there, but his football intelligence, zone coverage, tackling form, his deep speed isn't great. Had some concerns there to kind of move him into a reserve versatile role.
How do you guys rate Brevin Jordan at tight end? Where does he fall as far as like your
he's
scoring?
our third tight end, I believe. In the 6'6", it's a not a great tight end class. I wrote up Kyle Pitts, who's ridiculous. And we have Pat Fryermuth as the only other starting level 6'7" and above. Again, not role specific, just 6'7" and above tight end. And then you get into Brevin Jordan, who's not a terrible blocker. Again, he's going to be definitely usable on rundowns, but you're not going to be bringing him into run block. You're bringing him in because he's super fast and going to be a mismatch as a speed weapon, as a receiver. Has the pedigree from high school, crazy athlete for the position and everything. So maybe didn't have the ridiculous college career that everybody expected him to.
Mm-hmm.
But again, somebody's going to take that pedigree and think that they can get him there finally. And so, yeah, he's our number 3 tight end. We like, he is big in the receiving metrics as well. He graded up really high.
Steve, what do you think here? Jordan's there. We've got a couple corners like Adebo and Taylor.
I'm a big fan of Keith Taylor Jr. I think he's going to go earlier than people think, but I'm also a big fan of Adebo as well.
I'm a huge fan of Adebo. For a zone coverage team, I think somebody's going to take him super high.
Yes, let's take him. Can we please? Because I've been like on this guy's jock for like 2 months.
Keep it on corner. Keep it on corner too, because you have Trill Williams and you have Mukuamu, so you can go in the third and possibly get your big nickel. So you can go out and get a boundary corner with that pick. Is that a trade-up offer?
Yeah, we're gonna move up almost 20 spots, give up a 5th. We could go ahead
and I'd secure your big nickel with the next pick. And okay. I would let you obviously choose, John, between who do you think here? Would it be if you're looking for a bigger nickel, you talk True Williams or Mukuamu? Who are you going to take there?
I would go, let's see. I'd probably go Mukuamu there.
Okay.
Let's do it for Randy. Yeah. We got to make Randy happy. All right. So we've got, we are addressing some holes here on the Bills roster right now. It's really kind of
people forget about Adebo, but his ball production when he played, he opted out last year and then was injured at the end of 2 years ago. But less country interceptions, like pass breakups. I think he had 25 pass breakups outside of the 8 picks that he had in a year and a half. Former receiver, like he had some crazy production. So I think his own team's going to really fall in love with him.
It just looked like to me watching him, like he was so good with his hands at like the point of the attack and defending passes, like especially like with body control and like just getting in the right position. That's what it seemed like to me that really stood out for.
Yeah, it's interesting because he's not the quickest guy. He's not like the most natural kind of cover corner. And yet he'd still always find his way to get to the catch point. He's just so long, closing speed. Like he just has a knack to get to the ball and taking angles to track the ball and just natural ball skills.
There was 2 players that went off the board in like the late 3rd, early 4th round. And I want to get your thoughts. Obviously you have Aleem McNeil as your number 1 defensive tackle. And then I personally am a huge fan of Walker Little, who I see at least in a lot of these websites going later. Are Aleem McNeil and Walker Little 2 guys who a lot of people have going later on in like the 3rd, 4th round, who you could see going, early second round? Like this draft could be all over the place this year because of that lack of a combine and that lack of a group think. Am I overthinking it? Like, is their athleticism something that should get them ranked higher or?
No, absolutely. I think, and you nailed it. I think this is going to be the most interesting year for kind of Twitter conversation and just kind of the group think of where everybody expects guys to go. And then that not happening during the draft. People are going to be kind of up in arms during the draft at where some of these guys go because there's so little of that conversation going on. It all started back last year when I've heard people saying now with pro days going on now, they're getting these numbers for juniors for next season or for sophomores for next season. this is when that process happens, and there just wasn't any of that this past year. There wasn't that in-person scouting and stuff. So it's going to be a whole different animal. So yeah, Walker Little's a guy. I mean, obviously the crazy pedigree from high school, was destined to be a top 10 pick, was looking like it. And then the injuries happen. And yeah, so the guy who wrote his report said that in the little bit of the one game that he played this past season, he finally started fixing some of those weaknesses that he had with his game. Kind of the drive strength and anchor, the hand technique, some of that stuff that he was looking for, the foot quickness. He started flashing some of that stuff in that first game, and then he got hurt again. So he's kind of the biggest unknown in the draft. We haven't seen him in 2 years. But again, if you're just going off of what he was graded as the last time we saw him on the field, yeah, somebody could definitely take him high enough and be like, we're just getting a steal here a little bit later than what he was projected to 2 years ago.
Yeah. There's two guys that are sticking out to me as Dave was clicking through here on the offensive line. At offensive tackle, a guy who I don't think is going to be a tackle at the end of the day. He'll probably kick inside, but Brendan James from Nebraska. And the other guy is Jack Anderson from Texas Tech. You guys like these as sort of some mid-round offensive linemen that could
Yeah, we have a lot of guys that are graded in kind of the 6'2" range of, again, kind of that versatile backup. We have a number of guys in that range. I had one on the tip of my tongue there of a similarly rated guy. But yeah, there's a bunch of guys. Yeah,
I like Anderson here. I do like a couple of the wide receivers. I like
Anthony Schwartz is interesting with that 4.26 speed. But the man, his catch rate does not seem to be very high.
No,
and he didn't return kicks or punts in college. So like, are people just gonna try to like toss him some screen passes and hope for the best? Like,
he was literally a gadget guy at Auburn, and he was a gadget guy. But the interesting thing was he was a gadget guy, and then he was the threat of the gadget guy, which in a lot of ways is the threat in itself and value in itself. That I mean, he was put in jet motion on almost every play, and defenses had to shift when he went in motion. You had to kind of account for that possibility of him getting a handoff and using that world record track speed and taking it the distance. So, but yeah, he's really got to improve as a true receiver to be more than a late round guy.
Like, I personally would rather have Daz Newsome than Anthony Schwartz. That's just my preference because of his punt and kick return ability, his ability to play the slot. Again, this is like just a mock draft, but we've got a couple people. Manny obviously loves Marlon Williams. He's been a big Marlon Williams. So that's an interesting one, right? Because Marlon Williams, UCF, a year ago it was Gabriel Davis that came out of that program, was drafted by the Bills, and now it's Marlon Williams this year coming out of UCF and kind of in that similar range in the draft, right? Fifth-ish round range, fourth, fifth round. So how did Marlon Williams stack up against Gabriel Davis in your guys' metrics?
We have Marlon a lot lower than we did Gabriel. Really just struggles to separate. That's going to be his biggest issue is not being a huge body and lacking that ability to separate in your routes is going to be a huge hindrance for him. Obviously, I mean, he's a fast guy. But slot receiver in the gimmicky offense, we just didn't see. We project him as a big slot receiver and a backup at that. We were not as big a fan of his as Gabriel for sure. On the receiver list that you were looking at there, I was the one guy that intrigues me as kind of a later round guy in that range would be Imad Bebe.
I really like him. Yeah,
he's just really good, and he's another guy. When we're talking about guys in this range of you're going to have to develop them, they've got a trait here or two that you're trying to figure out, but maybe can't separate, or maybe isn't the best route runner, or Schwartz has the speed, but you're just trying to work on this kind of stuff. Imad Bebe's got the athleticism for days. I mean, everybody saw the vertical jump the other day. People remember the vertical jump from in high school at the opening that he went viral for, where he's just floating. He's got the ability
as well, right? If I'm not mistaken, doesn't he?
I think so. And again, yeah, like he's just kind of a guy that he doesn't have that natural route tree. He just hasn't done it. He hasn't been asked to do it. He hasn't really needed to. He's just running fades and vertical routes and posts and slants and is pretty well covered, and then just out jumps guys. Like, you just throw it up to him. So he's a guy where you have that elite athleticism. I'm going to take a chance on a guy like that. He's kind of bounced around a bit in his career. I think he's definitely the kind of guy where somebody's going to see those traits and be like, let's finally get him a home. Let's put him to work. Let's get him in the room, teach him a route tree. And he's got the stuff that you can't teach.
There are some receivers who could sure teach him a thing or two in Buffalo, and Cole Beasley and Stephon Diggs and Emmanuel Sanders. But
absolutely,
the issue I have with taking like a Matt Breida here is, can you get on a practice squad? Because to me, if you take him here and you use a 5th round pick on him, like, do you really take a guy here that you don't know is going to make your roster? And if you cut him, development in the NFL is tough because you got to get these guys on your practice squad, and there's no guarantee they're going to stay there once they get there. That's my big issue here with any of these wide receivers late. It would be an ability to be able to keep them on a practice squad. That's why I would just wait till UDFA and go with my guy Antonio Nunn, but that's just me.
So who do you like here, Steve, as far as like the roster composition? We're in the 5th round now.
I like, if we're just going to keep going defense, the linebacker Garrett Wallow from TCU sticks out to me. What are your thoughts on Garrett Wallow?
We have him, I believe, at Mike linebacker. We had him actually as one of our guys to look for last season, which is interesting that he ended up being a guy. But yeah, we had him as a Mike linebacker, pretty lowly rated. I'm not even sure if he made the cut for the book looking at it, but yeah, we had him highlighted and was the Senior Bowl this year, but didn't make the cut for us as a Mike linebacker. He just missed the cut.
Mm-hmm. All right. So
that's a guy that probably we could get. I would imagine we probably can wait
later
on him. But I'm with you on the receivers.
Yeah, if you're making the decision here, are you going with the big time wide receiver? Are you going with maybe like a Jack Anderson, a Brandon James? Like, where would you be leaning here if you were the GM?
Yeah, so we have Brendan James as a swing tackle, backup swing tackle, who's a guy who could play left and right. No less Tyne Secchi, who's a former Washington guy as well, who was a great swing tackle for us and then became a starter for you guys and now back to, I think he went to Dallas, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, Brendan James is a guy who we think is going to fill in that role, just be a solid swing tackle left and right. He can fill in on either side to start if you need him to. But ideally, he's going to be back up on both sides, left and right. He's got experience at both.
That intrigues me. And
here, Dave.
You want to? Yeah, okay.
Let's
I
do
like
it.
him.
I need a swing tackle.
Yeah, okay. It might be early, but that's fine. No guarantee he's going to be there.
Down, so.
Well, that was on the tackle list.
Oh, tackle.
Yeah, it's fine. Look,
I'm a big fan of Chauncey Golston. I don't think we're going to sign him now that we got Obada, but I think Chauncey Golston's flying under some radars.
He's in that similar mold of a inside-outside versatile, strong dude.
All right, so we obviously, I don't remember. I don't think that was the only trade we made, right? We gave up our 4th, but I think we should still have our.
We got a 6 and a 7 still coming to us.
Here we go. We're coming up here. Matt Breida is still on the board.
Oh, not for long. He's clinging on there. If he's still there, I'd say just grab him. Oh,
I mean, I think we got to grab him, right?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Nice.
You guys have Malcolm? Do you guys have Malcolm Kuntz ranked?
Yeah, we do. He's a edge rusher. Let me get the exact grade. We have him at a 5'9", one of the lower rated edges for us. Backup, stand up, 3-4. Inconsistent run defender, but he's got the ability to get after the quarterback. Going to be a third down only guy. Got the first step explosion at least.
I think you mentioned Rumforetti. You had him at like a 6 point something, if I'm not mistaken.
6'5", yeah, in the same range as the Osai group. Yeah,
there are so many wide receivers here that just intrigue me between Powell and.
I like Cade Johnson too, but Darden sticks out like a sore thumb.
Darden's still there. Yeah, we actually had Darden rated higher than Matt Breida, so for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jacoby Stevens from LSU. What are your thoughts on him?
You're talking about big nickel guys where we had him more in just the box safety. He's not necessarily in the same mold as the Hufanga, Nasir El-Din group, where those guys are really number 3 safeties who can play in coverage a bit. Going to have more specific roles. Jacoby Stevens is almost a linebacker. Like you could grade him straight up as a linebacker if you wanted to. He's got the size. but he's got that athleticism as a safety. We have some concerns in coverage, more so than the other two guys. But really good run defense and motor, and gets after it. And at his size, he's going to be a mismatch just with his athleticism in dime packages. He's like strictly a dime package linebacker, whereas some of these other guys might be nickels that you bring in. Again, looking at like the team page stuff, one of the things that I noticed is the Bills ran nickel more than anybody else in the league, 91%, I think, just nickel every time. So that would be a guy where maybe you go to dime every once in a while and you can bring in a Jacoby Stevens who you have graded or you have listed as a safety, but he's playing linebacker, those kind of responsibilities.
Interesting. Taiwan Jones sticks out to me a little bit at defensive tackle.
Yeah, we haven't really addressed the interior defensive line, and obviously, McNeil was long gone. I like Forrest Merrill, kind of. Honestly, I mentioned him before. I'm sure you guys don't have him ranked, but he intrigues me. But I would probably go with Taiwan Jones over him at this point if we wanted to continue addressing that defense. I mean, I'm kind of with you, Steve. We got the receiver. I mean, we could go double receiver, but then you're in the same issue you had before, right? Like, who's making the team? Darden's probably not going to make it to your practice squad. What other positions? You maybe want to look at tight end, like a Poljan.
Ooh, Tony Poljan I like too. And Matt Bushman. Those are two guys late.
We're higher on Poljan than most as a blocking tight end for sure.
Well, it could be your team.
Another thing, obviously, the Bills didn't use a lot of 12 personnel at all. They really just ran with, if they ran with tight end at all, they ran with Dawson Knox. So
yeah, well, that's what we've been discussing that a lot on the show, because in 19 they ran quite a bit of it, and they had some success running the football, and then in 2020 they shifted to more of that spread offense with the 10 personnel. So we thought maybe the Buffalo Bills sit down this offseason and think, well, if they're bringing John Feliciano back and they're bringing Cody Ford back, like if they're bringing it all back on the offensive line, and their only tight end right now that they've brought in is Jacob Hollister, could they be running more 12 personnel this year? Could that be something the Buffalo Bills make a decision to do in order to boost the run game, mix a little bit of 12 personnel in with their 10 personnel, 11 personnel? But easier said than done, switching up all that personnel on the fly like that.
Right. It makes you wonder if they were just doing it. It certainly, since they did it 2 years ago, it's not something they're against. It was just personnel wise. That's where they went, which is always what you're looking for. You're not looking for fitting square pegs in round holes. You're looking to kind of build the team around what you do best. But yeah, Hollister's a decent tight end. And then if they wanted to draft a tight end, then you just adjust from there. So Poljan's really good, huge body, big tight end.
Let's go. You want to go with it?
I'll pull the trigger on a nice blocking tight T3 behind Hollister and Knox.
All right.
Nate Wilson coming to the super chat. He says, what are your thoughts on Christian Barmore? Where do you have him graded out?
I did Christian Barmore's report. I had him high, and then I dropped him a little bit. He's pretty much all projection right now. I'm a fan of his. I think he's going to be awesome. I gave him a 6.8. But so I do Alabama's snap counts. I've done them for the past 3 years. Like, Alabama's my team that I've been assigned for the past 3 years. So I know exactly how much they've used them. And until pretty much like the second half of this past season, Christian Barmore was strictly a passing down, like very defined passing down interior rusher, where they'd bring him in when they go like very defined nickel or dime pass rush situations in 3rd and long. And obviously he was great. He flashed a ton as a redshirt freshman, and then played well as a redshirt sophomore this year early on, and then started growing into maybe playing some rundowns and starting to do a little bit of both. And then everybody sees the highlights of the national championship and what he did there against the run and chasing stuff down, beating zone blockers to the spot and everything at Ohio State. And so they think he's this great run defender, and he just hasn't done it. So he's just, his body type is ridiculous. He's built like a barrel, like a complete barrel, and he's just an athlete, it's insane. But he's just all projection right now. I think he's going to be a great pass rusher. I think he's got to have to work on the motor, especially in the run. He's got to work on that run anchor against double teams and stuff as an interior guy, where he's just a penetrator right now. He's really not going to be the guy that's going to stand up guys and kind of read and shake and shed both ways. But he's got a lot of potential for sure. Ton of potential.
And just to answer Manny's question, you guys had Jalen Phillips, I believe, ranked as your highest.
Phillips is number 1. Ojulari is number 2. Yep.
Okay. Well, there you go, Manny. Ojulari's number 2. Another guy that I wonder if he fits with the Bills schematically. I feel like he's probably more of a 3-4 stand-up guy, but I could be wrong on Ojulari. Actually, while you're here, what do you position wise, Ojulari? How do you see him projecting into the NFL, John?
We have him as a stand-up outside 3-4 guy.
Okay.
Definitely, he's going to be a guy. We gave him a good coverage rate as well. Again, a lot of these guys didn't do it a ton. Looking at his numbers, I mean, he was about 60% 3-point versus 2-point stance, and he rushed about 78% of the time. So that's 22% of the time dropping. So he did it plenty. He's got the athleticism for sure. He's comfortable enough in space. Lacks some change of direction ability, but he's got the first step length that you look for, the hand use. He's kind of one of the more natural pass rushers. Got all the tools there. And then you get more guys like Rashad Weaver and Owe and guys like that are your more typical 4-3 hand down, your strong side defensive end classic looks there.
To me, Osai and Ojulari are going to be two of the guys I'm really fascinated to see where they end up, right? And how teams use them, because I see a lot of Bills fans liking both of those guys. And to me, that's an investment you make not just in the player, but you also have to make an investment into fitting them into your scheme. Now, like you said, they could be chess pieces, but I wonder if the Bills go outside their comfort zone with any of these picks and go for a guy that maybe on the surface schematically doesn't fit, but just from an athleticism and potential standpoint, they won't be able to pass it up.
Yeah, the edge class overall is really interesting for us because we're so used to every year, like the past few years, it's the first defensive guy off the board's an edge rusher. He's going in the top 3 picks in the draft. Mm-hmm. Like we've just gotten used to that. The Bosa brothers, Chase Young, like every year that's going on. Mm-hmm. And this year people are saying like the top 8 picks are going to be offensive players. And then there's not going to be an edge rusher until like mid first round or whatever. So it's a bit of a difference there. And our grades reflect that. We do have, I believe 7 edges ranked in that 6-7 range. But the grades that we give are based on the second year. So we're projecting all this stuff to a player's second year in the NFL. And a lot of these guys we ended up grading as, I kind of want to go 6-6 on this guy, but I just think by his second year, he's going to figure it out. Like we have Greg Rousseau rated lower than some people. We have Jason Owe rated a bit lower than some of these people. Again, they're 6-7s because by their second year, we just think they'll figure it out. But it's going to take. We don't really have anybody that's we think is going to come in day one right away and defensive player of the year front runner or defensive rookie of the year front runner and just kind of step in and jump from there.
Really quick, because a lot of Bills Mafia likes this guy. What do you have Carlos Basham rated?
6'6". He's just outside that edge group. Okay. And I was actually a big fan of Carlos Basham. I think Nate Cooper did his report as well. Tough dude. One of the kind of the change up to all these guys that we're talking about, so toolsy and athleticism and pass rushers and everything. And then he's just going to bully you over and strong side run defense and pass rusher just to bull rush you right through you. So yeah, I like Carlos Basham a lot.
Nice. All right, John, we want to thank you so much. Just a wealth of knowledge. We'll have to have you back on before the draft if you're free. Before you go, talk about the book one more time where people can find it. I'm going to post the link again in the chat section for anyone who wants to go on to Amazon and purchase it.
It's really good, man. I mean, so many hours have been spent in this thing already.
Mine gets here on Sunday. I've been slacking this year. Mine gets here on Sunday. And also tell us your favorite player in the draft. I would just want to know who your personal favorite, if you were a GM, what player would you want from this draft class?
Okay, so to start off, to get the handbook, actasports.com, actasports.com. For a physical copy, for a digital copy, you can go to Amazon. We've done Kindle this year. You can get it that way. You can do it whatever. Again, sportsinfo_SIS on Twitter. I'm at the real John Todd on Twitter, but I don't really tweet too much. And yeah, to follow us, then again, sportsinfosolutions.com, go to our careers page. Again, like I said, the job posting is going to be coming out really soon. Just had meetings about it today, and I lead that whole process. So anybody's interested in becoming a part of this whole process moving forward, reach out and I'll be the one to get in touch with you. So favorite player in the draft. So I did a lot of the big dogs this year. I did Penei Sewell. I did Kyle Pitts. I did Jamar Chase. Javonte is maybe a personal favorite just from again, we didn't really mention him earlier too much, but just run through your face. I mean, he broke tackles at a higher clip than anybody we've seen in doing these ratings. And pass protection, like he just had it all for me. Penei Sewell's as fun as I've had watching a player. I'm a big offensive line guy as it is. But Penei Sewell was just everything that I was looking for in a dude who's doing all this stuff that you forget he's doing all this stuff at 19 years old, won the Outland Trophy at 19, starting as a true freshman. For Cristobal, who's a offensive line stickler, like you got to be a stud to play for that guy too. He just had it all. I had such like run blocking, screens in space. He's just insane. They would run so much of their offense behind him based on his ability to combo up to the second level, and he'd just take care of two guys every time, double team at the first level, and then combo up to and flatten the linebacker at the second level. Kyle Pitts is ridiculous. I don't think he has to just be this offensive weapon that people are talking about. Like, he's not a tight end. Like, I think he can block well enough. He's at least competitive enough. He's just got to get in the weight room. He's got rail thin arms, but who cares when you can be a legitimate X receiver in the SEC? So it's been a fun class. I did a lot of the big guys. But yeah, I'd go with Penei Sewell, Javonte probably as a sentimental pick there.
All right. I got to ask you then. Washington, pick 19. You know, Sewell's not going to be there. Pitts is not going to be there.
Yep.
Who's the guy you want for Washington at pick 19?
They've taken care of receiver now, it feels like. Samuel and Humphreys. Tony would have been interesting as the Curtis Samuel type, and now they don't need to do that anymore. I'm big. They need a linebacker. And I was big on pass catches, and I think they've handled that. So I think they need a linebacker. I'm hoping Owusu-Koramoah falls. I think he's exactly what they're looking for. Yeah. I think
a nice trade on Bills with the team from Washington to get our
yeah. If nobody likes there, then yeah, open for business. But yeah, I mean, Rivera's all about the culture fits and the leadership and everything, and then we're looking for space linebackers.
That'll soften the blow of losing Pierre Lewis if you can get.
I mean, he's a will linebacker on steroids, not literally, but like he's the ultra will linebacker where he's just basically an extra safety out there with Cam Curl on the other side, and had a good class last year. Chase Young's pretty fun.
All right, thank you so much, man. Really appreciate it. Hopefully Sewell falls to the Bengals. I don't want him to end up in the AFC East. And Joe Burrow deserves some protection there. And if he can't have a quality head coach, he might as well have a quality left tackle. So Joe Burrow deserves something nice in Cincinnati. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. We always sign off with a Go Bills. Like, what do you even do now? Like, is it Go Team?
I saw when Ryan Fitzpatrick signed, he did the whole like take a selfie video, and like it used to be HTTR. That was what everybody did. And he signed off with saying Go Football Team. And I was like, that's awful. Like, we got to get a new name here. Like,
Go
I've
Team
seen,
Washington.
Yeah, it's been circling back up. Like, just pick any plural noun at this point. Like, it can't be football team anymore.
I'm big on the Red Tails. I was a big Red Tails guy.
Red Tails. I was a big Red Wolves guy, or just Wolves.
Those jerseys were sick. Those mock-ups of the Red Wolves jerseys were the nice.
Last summer was a big mock-up Photoshop season for Washington Twitter, but. Just give me anything. It just all this dropping hints about keeping the Washington football team. I'm not about that. We need something.
All right. So how about you give us a Go Fits, and we'll go Bills. How's that sound?
There you go. Yeah. Go Fits. Go football team. Yeah.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.